5 Live Formula One.
After a 4-week break, Formula One is back in full swing. We had a race in Azerbaijan last weekend, and now the teams have flown the 7,000 miles to the southeast of the United States for the 5th round of the championship in Miami. As F1 tries to continue its growth in the US, this Miami race has become the home of the glitz and glamour and celebs. And speaking of glitz and glamour and celebs, I'm joined by Jolyon Palmer, the former Renault F1 driver, and our pit lane reporter for this weekend, Christian Hugill. Christian, Miami is... it's unlike any F1 race I've ever been to.
You are absolutely right, and I can tell you why, is the fact that I'm sat currently inside on what would normally be the pitch of the Miami Dolphins Stadium. Formula One has moved most of the paddock inside the stadium this year, and the paddock, for those new to Formula One, it's the bit where the sort of teams and drivers hang out in between sessions. I've just seen Sir Jackie Stewart in 30-degree heat, still wearing his tartan trousers and his long-sleeve white shirt. The heat doesn't bother Sir Jackie. And here is a hive of activity. And what's lovely, Jack, is that the fans who pay general admission can come in and sit in the very top tier of the stadium. So as I'm looking out across the Hard Rock Stadium now, I can see fans who've come in after the free practice one session, and they can look down and drive a spot and an area of Formula One that's normally quite closed off the paddock to all but a very lucky few. So they can look down and spot Fernando Alonso, Logan Sargent, Sir Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and it's really nice. A lovely atmosphere here in the stadium.
Yeah, I went to that viewing platform last year actually to look inside, and all you could see was nothing, so it wasn't really worth it. Went inside, had a look, went, oh, this is a big stadium, and head out again. Jolyon, lots of expectation last year, lots of, fanfare in the build-up. Off-track it was chaotic and mad, and I remember seeing David Beckham trying to get a car to reverse out of his way because he was trying to reverse his way out of the paddock. It was all carnage. On the track, what did we make of the Miami Grand Prix?
Beck's got himself in a twist, didn't he? Trying to leave the track in a hurry.
Honestly, when he's like in the passenger seat and he's opened the door and he's going, back up to the car behind. It was great. It was one of the coolest things I've seen in my life.
And that just really summed up the chaos of last year's Miami Grand Prix. I mean, the amount of celebs that were generally around the paddock, on the grid, it was bedlam. It was celebrity bedlam. On the track, it was an all-right race. It was one that Max Verstappen won in the end. Ferrari had a 1-2 lockout on the grid, but Verstappen quickly passed them and went on to win the race, as was the tone for the championship last year. It was a bit of overtaking. There was a late fight for the win. Leclerc tried to come back at Verstappen, but it didn't quite live up to the really high billing that we had and the razzmatazz that was through the weekend. I think Miami could do with this one being a really good race, being one that is really spoken about. I think the last year's one was fine, but we'll forget about it in time. I think this year, for all the glitz and the glamour, they need to deliver actually a decent Grand Prix.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see what happens. Max Verstappen leads the championship coming into this weekend, but only by 13 points over Sergio Perez, his teammate, who has... by 6 points over his teammate. It was 13 before last weekend, and then Perez did well. So now it's 6 points over his teammate Sergio Perez. They're comfortably clear of the rest of the pack. It's a fight between those two. And Christian, after the race in Baku, Perez came on the radio and he was like, we're still in this fight. And he wasn't saying that to Christian Horner or to any of those. He was saying that to his side of the garage, right? To try and motivate his gang.
Yeah, I spoke to Sergio yesterday. We'll hear a bit of that shortly. And there's certainly belief there. Sergio believes he's capable. And just before I came down to the stadium to talk to you guys, I was listening into the team principal's press conference. And Christian Horner said in that, I noticed a subtle change to where he was last weekend. He once again said, listen, if Sergio's going to challenge across the season, he needs to do well at some of the more traditional chats, Spain, Silverstone, whatever. He then added, which I didn't hear from him last weekend, of course, we've got no doubt that Sergio is capable of that. And that's really the big question, isn't it? We know Sergio does well on street circuits. All of his Red Bull wins have been on street circuits. It is a street circuit, really. The walls are dead close. I mean, I suppose if you're being technical, you'd call it a car park circuit. So there's no reason why Sergio won't be competitive again here. I suppose the big question will be, as we move into the so-called more traditional circuits, will Sergio be on Max's tail quite as much there?
Yeah, well, let's hear from those two Red Bull drivers. Max Verstappen spoke first. Spoke to Perez and Verstappen. We'll start with Verstappen.
I think the car is very quick. But let's see. I mean, we know in qualifying it's close, but in the race, normally our car is pretty good.
And what about the race? How tough is 57 laps of this place in the heat and the humidity? You all look like you'd had a good workout after the race last year.
Yeah, it was very tough, very humid. I do feel so far it's maybe a little bit colder. I mean, it's still warm, but let's see once we sit in the cars. But I expect it to be a tough weekend. Yeah.
Checo, I've lost track of the number of times I've seen Sergio Perez king of the streets in the last week. So obviously, most people class this as a street circuit. That means it's going to be another nice, easy win this weekend. No worries at all.
I wish. I mean, I've had 6 wins in my career, but none of them have been easy. So I cannot wait for an easy win one day, you know. But they just keep getting harder and harder. So we have to work hard for them.
I don't suppose many races are going to be easy when Max Verstappen's your teammate. From a driver's perspective, what's the key to keeping things competitive, which obviously you want to do, and Red Bull are letting you race, but also making sure you don't get into sticky situations which Mercedes have seen in the past, Red Bull have seen in the past? How do you balance that as a driver?
Yeah, I think we have a great relationship, a very good level, high level of respect between Max, myself, and also the team is in a great momentum, and we really appreciate the job that everyone. It's not only about Max and myself, it's all about the 1,000 people that work at Red Bull.
So that's Sergio Perez, and before that, Max Verstappen. Jolyon, there's a lot of easy things to say about Perez in terms of he's really good on street circuits. He does well on street circuits. He can't do the traditional tracks. You know, we heard Horner echoing it there. Is that true, or is that just a bit of a sort of an easy assumption to make? And Checo can't drive on a regular racetrack?
Well, that's a pretty big sweeping statement. His wins have all come on street circuits. He's phenomenally good on street circuits. Even if you go before his Red Bull days, he was taking podiums at Monaco in midfield cars. He was taking podiums at Baku in Force Indias, racing points. They're just midfield cars fighting with the big boys, with Ferrari. I remember he had a dice with Vettel in a Ferrari, and it was real giant killing stuff on street circuits. He's had a couple of podiums. He had a win, his first win was in Bahrain on an outer ring, but he hasn't shone nearly as well on conventional circuits. When you're actually driving, you know, the technique is not massively different.
Yeah.
When the walls are right on the edge or when you got a bit of runoff. But for some reason, he is able to just extract more when they're on street circuits, like this one is. He does seem more confident this year, though. 4 races in, 2 wins on the street circuits. But he's also not been that bad. In Bahrain particularly, race pace was okay. Australia, he had a car issue, came from the back, did okay. I feel like he's more confident start of this year than he was last year. It's just such a long season, though. 23 races. When you feel like Verstappen's going to find his feet at some point and march away from Perez. The form guide would surely...
Does it feel like Arsenal, Man City? Where you're like, okay, yeah, fine, Arsenal are there, but Man City are coming.
And then everyone questions whether are Arsenal going to get over the line? Is the flip actually going to come? And then, of course it is. Of course it is. It is a little bit like that. It feels like it. It feels like the juggernaut is Verstappen here. Perez is doing the giant killing right now, and he's giving us a fight. He's giving us something to talk about. Otherwise, Verstappen is marching away. He's champion already by the time we get into May. So Perez is doing a great job to match Verstappen. Can he go toe-to-toe through not 38 football matches, but 23 Grand Prix? That's going to be the big question, because I just can't see that anyone else is going to challenge Verstappen for a title.
Well, let's look at a question you tend to ask in these situations. Can he recover from a setback? Say there's a bad weekend. Well, he sort of had a setback in Melbourne. He was struggling with his brakes in qualifying. He outbraked himself. He dusted himself down, and he's picked up a race win since then. So that's sort of a check in his box. Is he...
A check in his box.
Very good, Jack Nicholls. We know he has been closer to Max than I think most of us were expecting this year. And yes, we've known he's, as you rightly said, we've known he's been good at street circuits for a while, but he's closer than we expected to be. All the signs, to me, are pointing to that at the very least, once we get into the so-called traditional circuits, he'll be closer than he's been in previous years. Christian Horner also made the point at the press conference. It's his 3rd year in the team. He's properly settled now. I suppose what you don't want to see, I can't remember the season, was it 2018 when we were all saying about Bottas 2.0, where Valtteri Bottas started
I think Bottas
the season?
was saying about Bottas 2.0 really more than anybody else, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it didn't last. To me, the signs are pointing... my head rules my heart. To me, my head is saying, actually, the signs point towards him carrying on long term. My heart's saying it's not going to happen, is it? And Max will just blow him out of the water come round 6 or 7. Let's see. I certainly look. We want a close fight, no matter whose side of the fence you're on. You want a close fight. So I certainly hope Checo can keep on Max's tail, because spoke to Carlos Sainz yesterday. Ferrari, I've seen a few people saying this weekend, Ferrari expect to be closer. Well, Carlos Sainz literally said to me they don't expect to be any closer yesterday. So if we're going to get a close battle, it's probably going to come from Checo, isn't it?
The other thing is, it's going to be surely the Red Bulls fighting. The other thing is, I feel like you guys have been eulogising about Perez's best wins. Was Jeddah his best ever win?
He had no right to win Jeddah or Baku. No, there was no way on
But then the
paper he was
consensus was that Jeddah, round 2 this year, was his best win. And then 2 races later, he wins again in Baku. And was Baku his best ever win? And... they've been great wins.
He got 6, I suppose,
yeah,
so it's quite a small sample to choose from, isn't it?
But with all of them, we feel like he's generally getting better. He's fighting Verstappen more on an even keel, and that's why it's more impressive. Jeddah, Verstappen came from the back, but had a safety car break, and they had 5 seconds between them, and Perez held on. Baku, there was a couple of seconds, or even 1 second between them, and Perez held on. But I do feel like all of Perez's wins this year are going to come with Verstappen on his tail. I don't think he's going to get an easy win, whereas I can see Max having some easy wins, and that's the difference. In a 23 race season, I mean, there's more chance for the stronger driver to flex their muscles. And for Perez, if he's, I think he's doing a great job. I don't think he's naturally as strong as Verstappen, so he's got to be punching every weekend, achieving the most he can. 23 races is a lot for him to do. He's got to take it race by race. Anything can happen. He'll get more confidence with every race that's going well, and Verstappen will maybe start feeling a bit more pressure, and that's when things can go his way. But it's definitely still majorly advantage Verstappen.
Yeah, and Verstappen cracking under pressure was something we waited for, or we were anticipating might happen throughout the entirety of 2021.
He's not human. He's not human in that way.
Exactly. Christian, we say it's going to be between the Red Bulls this weekend. We've just had the first practice session. Okay, it's only the first practice session, but it wasn't quite as dominant as maybe we thought it was going to be.
Well, no, the feeling yesterday, talking to various drivers, was that similar to Baku, the Red Bulls might well be able to be challenged on pace in a single lap. So, it might be close in qualifying, but on longer runs, not necessarily. Obviously, every time we talk about practice, we go, it's too early to tell in free practice 1. But actually, it did seem a little bit closer. And I certainly don't think George Russell, who went out, immediately went on the radio and said, guys, this is absolutely terrible. I need to come in. It's pointless as bothering. And they changed his steering rack, and they were properly fizzing round the car, loads of them rushing to try and get it back out again. And then George Russell ends the session fastest, as I said in commentary, a rags to riches story. I'm pleased with that one. So I don't
That's
think
what inspired my Checo pun. I heard you do that, and I thought, right, if Hugh Gill's bringing the terrible pun game, I will see him and I will raise him.
That's what I can bring to this coverage this weekend.
I'm out of here, guys. I'm out of here.
But yeah, so I don't think, certainly don't think Mercedes expected to be up there. I genuinely don't. And as I say, they weren't going mad, but there was definitely some wry smiles on both sides of the garage at the end of the session. And sort of, well, that's nice. So it'll be fascinating to follow that throughout the next 2 sessions. And I can just see the local boy, Logan Sargent, wandering out, soaking it all up just in front of me. So yeah, fascinating to see. I mean, so long as there's not a Red Bull at the top of the timesheet, we're all going to be quite interested, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. And if Perez is closer, then it's all right. But yeah, Mercedes won 2 in that first free practice session. Off track, Christian, Lewis Hamilton's always discussing, the social issues. When, I remember in Saudi Arabia a few weeks ago, he was saying, I'm not particularly happy being here and getting involved in those things. And it's the same this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And Formula One finding itself in the state of Florida, and it's a state where lawmakers are pushing forward with a so-called Don't Say Gay law, which is basically bars public schools from teaching about sexual education and gender identity, as I say, in schools. And only this week, a so-called bathroom bill's been passed that bans transgender people from using public restrooms that don't align with their sex at birth. So I had a little bit of a chat to Sir Lewis Hamilton about that, and this is what he had to say to me on those issues.
You know, my sympathy and my thoughts are with the people here in Miami, because it's the lawmakers that are making those decisions, and so I just stand by those within the community here, and I hope that they can stand firm and continue to push back. As I said, I'll be having the rainbow on my helmet this weekend. It's no different to when we're in Saudi, you know. I think it's not the right direction. It's not the right message. So I'm here this weekend. I'm hoping to, just by showing up and doing, you know, with my helmet, hopefully I will be continuing to support the LGBT community and showing that I stand with them in solidarity.
Sir Lewis was really keen to point out to me that he's racing with the rainbow LGBT plus flag on his helmet this weekend, as he has done for quite a while now. And I think it's important that when Formula One goes to countries that is experiencing difficulties in human rights, that the sport does talk about it, because, and not just in those venues we mentioned, Saudi Arabia, where it's sort of, and Qatar, where it's sort of raised a lot. You know, there are also human rights issues in other countries Formula One goes to, like here in the United States of America, and Sir Lewis was keen to talk about that here as he was in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, absolutely, always using his platform, Hamilton, which is really great to see. Are Mercedes going to be fighting at the front this weekend, Jolyon, or was that FP1 a bit of a flash in the pan like they did last year?
Yeah, I think it might have been. Sadly, it would be great to have them joining Ferrari and attacking Red Bull. Ferrari on pole last time out, but wilted in the race. And I think Mercedes, they went out right at the end of that session earlier on some new soft tyres, top of the session. Looks eye-catching, but I think is probably a little bit showboaty for their true pace. They've made changes behind the scenes in the technical department.
Do you think that's short-sighted of them? We had this sort of discussion a few weeks ago on the podcast in terms of it's now, because James Allison was moved to sort of look ahead to the future regulations, right? That was his sort of position, was looking ahead to 2026 and the new regs there. He's been brought in now, but that means presumably he's not working on the future regulations or quite so much, where that's got to be the next target for Mercedes, isn't it? 2026
I mean, that's depressing, isn't it?
Yeah, agreed.
No, come on. The regs are stable. It's a little bit of firefighting at the moment from Mercedes. They're on the back foot. They have started this year poorly, and considering they started last year so badly, spent the whole year trying to catch up, got there or thereabouts at the end, and then started this year in a similarly poor state. There's got to be changes being made. James Allison is proven. He's won championships as technical director at Mercedes. He's built that team into being part of the team that's made them world beaters for so long. I don't think it's a bad move to do that. Looking for this whole long-termism in Formula One. I know, I get the logic for it, but 2026 that's far away. We've only just started 2023. So you're going to rule out the next 2 seasons as well. Mercedes don't have time to be average, especially Lewis Hamilton doesn't have time to be average as well. They need to try and sort this out, and they can, because the rules aren't changing majorly, so they've got a stable base.
But also, surely you would argue that a team like Mercedes has the resources to do both, doesn't it? I know everyone's working under a cost cap now, but surely you would think there can be a part of that operation with one eye on the future and one eye on the present. And I was slightly surprised yesterday by just how adamant Carlos Sainz was when I was talking to him. That, all right, he was saying it's not going to happen this weekend. You know, Ferrari won't be catching Red Bull this weekend. But looking later in the season, he was really sure they can. And who knows, maybe that's Carlos putting on a front. But there seemed optimism that medium term, shall we say, they can be caught. I haven't heard that same optimism from Mercedes, really. Again, are they being more realists as opposed to Ferrari's blind optimism? I guess we've got to wait and see. But, oh, goodness me, you would hope for Formula One fans' sake that they've not only ruled out this season, but also ruled out up until 2026. I mean, and it wouldn't be good for the sport, would it? A sport that's trying to, make moves in markets like here in the USA and capitalise on this surge in popularity in recent years and films being made about it. So I think the sport will hope that it's not a case of, right, that's Red Bull sorted for this round of regulations. We'll hope for a bit of a reset in 2026.
Well, remember, they've got they breached the cost cap, lest we forget, in 2021, and they've been penalised as a result. They've got less wind tunnel time. They've basically got less development time for this year. They've started with a monster car, but there is the carrot out there that everyone can catch them up, that everyone else can literally develop their car considerably more. So why should Mercedes not look at that and think, right, they've started out there, well, let's just go and match them. Well, let's use our considerably more time and find some areas of development, which there are going to be some easy gains. They need to change the concept in ways and join. I think they can do it.
Well, let's also remember, Jolene, as well, for those new to Formula One, part of the new rule changes was the so-called sliding scale of aerodynamic development. So if you finish 10th in the Constructors' World Championship, you get the most time to develop your car aerodynamically. Aston Martin finished, was it 7th in last year's Constructors' Championship? Forgive me if that's wrong off the top of my head. But they finished considerably further back than Red Bull, and they now find themselves, in that Ferrari-Mercedes pack chasing Red Bull. So there was also genuine hope that because Aston Martin will get so much more development time than the teams around them in Ferrari, Mercedes, and of course Red Bull, that towards the end of the season, how often in the Mercedes dominance years did we see Red Bull coming good towards the end of the season? Again, I've spoken to plenty of people in the paddock that are hoping that will be the case with Aston Martin towards the sort of, final third, final half of this season.
Yeah, but quite often that pattern is the team gets closer at the end of the year because the other team's taken their foot off the gas. That's what happened with Red Bull last year. Everyone closed in at the end. You thought, right, here we go. What a corker of a season we're in for in 2023. Oh, they're fast. Oh, the Red Bulls are fast. Right, we were hoping to bring you the full-time... Thank you very much, Sahel. We are previewing the Miami Grand Prix that's coming up this weekend on 5 Live. The race starts at 8 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, live on 5 Live. And so you can join us then for that coverage and the Checker Flag podcast, which will be available post-race with all of the analysis. And so... What's the biggest thing you're looking for this weekend, Palmer? Are you looking for Perez to do another strong showing, or are you looking for Miami to have a good Grand Prix, or both?
I'm looking for an awful lot.
You always are.
Yeah, exactly. Shoot for the stars.
And you might land at Renault.
yeah. You take Renault if they're doing better than they are right now. Alpine. So Perez needs to keep the fight going to Verstappen, number one. Number two, Miami needs to have a good race. And number three, I would just love Ferrari or Mercedes. I'm not even going to shoot for the stars on this one, but narrow the gap to Red Bull in terms of race pace. And Ferrari have a significant upgrade to their car. So they're particularly a team to look out for as we get into the deeper parts of the weekend.
Christian, what are you most looking forward to this weekend?
Let's go left field choice. I think on the Checker Flag Preview Show podcast, we are going to hear from Logan Sargent ahead of his first ever home race. He grew up 20 minutes down the road from here. And we were talking in free practice commentary that Logan has shown flashes of speed, but is yet to properly put a full weekend together. He's a nice guy, Logan, and he's doing really well. I'm stood outside Williams now, and I would like to see Logan Sargent put it together and see if he can get close to a couple of points in his home race. It'd be a lovely story for Miami and a lovely story for Logan Sargent if that could potentially happen.
Never done a car race in America, Logan Sargent, despite being from America.
What are you looking for?
What am I looking for? Another good race, because we've got... literally,
that's a bit of a bland answer, isn't it?
I know,
a good race.
We've literally got like 1 minute left, so I can't get too bogged down in it.
So
but
I'm looking for a good race.
I'm saying another good, because I think Baku got too much stick from people on the internet and from Toto Wolff saying it was a boring race. I quite enjoyed Baku.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
It was all right, wasn't it?
The top two just flat out for the whole race.
Cat and mouse.
Really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to another good motor race. That's it. That's all I have low expectations often coming into a Formula One race weekend. Well, thanks to Christian Hugel and to Jolyon Palmer. We'll be back with the Checker Flag podcast after qualifying tomorrow evening, and then a post-race Checker Flag podcast as well. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. As I say, the race gets underway 8 o'clock on Sunday evening. You can hear it on 5 Live. You can hear everything else across the BBC Sport network. And now it's time for a 5 Live cricket special with Stefan Schemmelt. Time for more previewing of the Miami Grand Prix here on the Checker Flag podcast. Jolyon Palmer still with me, Christian Hugel still with me as well. And there was a bit of chat after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, Christian. Toto Wolff called it boring. Boring, he said.
I know there are differing opinions on this, and I am usually a Formula One optimist. I tend to err on the side of glass half full with Formula One, but actually, I thoroughly enjoyed the first 3 races of the season, but I did find Baku a bit dull. And I know there was a lot of talk about, the flat-out battle between Verstappen and Checo. I just never really felt that Verstappen was going to get Perez, and I didn't find it the greatest race. On the flip side to that, this is a sport, and every sport in the world, sometimes you get a boring race, boring match, whatever. You know, when I don't see in football when Fulham draw 0-0 with Crystal Palace.
We need to have bigger goals.
Yeah, a great big reform of football. I think it's way too early in this rules cycle to be going, it's not worked, rip it up, everybody panic. I just think it was a bit of a dull race. And there are 23 races in the Formula One season now, so the odds are that a handful of them are going to be dull. And I still think there are fewer dull Grand Prix than there were going back 5 or 6 years, personally. So, yeah, I thought it was a bit dull, but I wouldn't panic too much. Hopefully this one will be good, and then everyone will have forgotten about it and we can stop panicking.
Are you panicking, Jolyon?
Never. I'm so cool, calm and collected here. I didn't mind it. I thought the race was okay. Look, it wasn't vintage. We'll forget about it in the future. But I didn't mind it. I mean, you did have a fight for the lead. I don't agree that Perez had it in the bag. There was a point, I think, with about...
I never thought he had it in the bag, honestly.
Maybe 5 to 10 laps to go. You thought, can he? Maybe he can do this. But they both Red Bulls tapped the wall. They were pushing so hard against each other, duking it out, fastest lap for each. The gap was, for a long time, about a second, then it was about 2 seconds, and even then you thought, this is Verstappen, surely he's going to have a run. They're both nudging the wall, they're on the edge of disaster. For me, I kind of enjoyed that. There's just seeing them drive actually so well to be able to just put in the lap after lap so quickly without having the catastrophic failure. You then had other battles. You had a chance of Alonso getting third. You had Mercedes having a little pass between them, and Stroll made a mistake. Hamilton came through. It wasn't overtakes aplenty. I wonder also if the sprint actually hindered the Grand Prix action a little bit. I'm still not sure about the whole sprint idea.
I think to me, the sprint... Look, if pod regular listeners will know probably what I think about the sprint, but by the time you get to the race, you've already seen a race, and you've already seen 2 qualifying sessions. You kind of know what's coming.
You know that Leclerc will be toast. No one tuned in on Sunday, having watched the sprint on Saturday, thinking Leclerc had any chance. If we didn't have that, you'd never know. The guy's a Baku master. Sure, the Rebels will be tough to keep behind, but you never know. But when you see the Rebels making mincemeat of Leclerc on Saturday in a third distance race, or at least Perez with Verstappen had his damage, and then he checks out a second a lap at the end, you kind of know what's going to happen. It's just a teaser to the Grand Prix. And I think it's going to be, more often than not, it's going to be a spoiler, isn't it? The sprint. Yeah. You're going to see who's actually looking good. You can't change the car before the Grand Prix. Do we want to do that? Yes, it's more action on a Saturday. Yes, it's a bit of action on the Friday. That's all good and fun. But if it hinders the Grand Prix on a Sunday, that's the main event. And that's where I'm just not sure on the balance of it all.
Christian, your thoughts on the sprint?
I don't know, Jack.
Cool, thanks for your contribution. We'll...
do you know what? I admire Formula One for, unlike the Bernie era, where it was like, this is the way it is, And except for that brief period where he went a bit mad and wanted to introduce medals, it was like, this is the way it is, and that's that. But I admire Formula One for going, listen, we're in the crest of a wave, everything's popular, Netflix, the 2021 season, whatever. Let's look at ways we can make it at improving the show. I sympathise with that. I think fair play to you. But I still, and I probably should have formed an opinion by now, for me the jury's still out, because I love the idea of more racing. I love the idea of a short sprint. I like the idea of it, but I agree with everything that you guys have just said, that I do think it potentially diffused the main race a little bit when we're talking about the main race in Baku. I think I prefer this format, actually, because I always used to watch qualifying and think, oh, well, this would be a good Grand Prix grid, but the sprint race might mess it up. So I like the fact it doesn't devalue qualifying as much. So for me, let's try it this season. Let's get to the end of the season. And I do think that if each sprint event has sort of diffused it like I think it did in Baku, then perhaps that will tell us something. But I'm going to sit, it's unlike me, but I'm going to sit slightly on the fence until the end of the season, because I like the idea, but I'm still not convinced we are far enough down the road of knowing the exact impact on the sport yet.
So you are just glass half, not glass half empty, not glass half full, just glass half.
Half a glass.
Half a glass.
Listen, if I thought it was a rubbish idea, I'd happily say, no, it's rubbish, I hate them. But I actually think it could be quite good. I just think we've got to give it a little bit more time, and especially with this tweaked format, let's see where we are at the end of the season. We'll have, and have a chat about it then, because as I say, I'm very much glass half. You decide whether that's full or empty.
The other thing is, so I mentioned that we all knew that Leclerc was going to be passed easily by the Red Bulls in the Grand Prix. Leclerc knew that. He didn't bother fighting them. He also knew that his tyres were going to shred, because they'd all had that run on the softs or the mediums, and they were all high deck. So he then drove, because he had the practice run, he then drove very defensively, and they all kept their tyres alive because they had a load more knowledge of racing on them for a third distance the day before.
Yeah.
If they didn't have that, maybe they start on more degrading tyres. Maybe we've got different strategies going on. The more I think about it, the more I think the sprint, it just took away from some of the unknowns of Sunday, from our point of view, but also the drivers and teams' point of view.
I also think there's a bit of a misperception, in my opinion, that Baku is a good track for good racing, because most of the time Baku is really, really quite dull, and then there'll be a late safety car and it'll go nuts. It's only with a safety car do you get anything interesting happen in Baku. The one everyone, thinks of a few years ago was only triggered. Okay, you had the Red Bulls fighting, Ricciardo and Verstappen. But until then, that had been a terrible, terrible, terrible race. And then it all kicked off because we had a 2-lap sprint at the end, or a 3-lap sprint in the end, and that was great. You had 2017, Hamilton and Vettel bumping into each other under the safety car. That only was interesting because there was a safety car and Vettel did the ramming, and then he had a penalty and someone had a loose headrest. You know what I mean? Baku is not great, in my opinion, as a racetrack. So everyone goes into it expecting Baku to be great because of chaos. If there isn't any chaos, it's not going to be interesting.
Yeah, you're right. It sort of relies on someone sticking it in the wall and bringing out
like
an unexpected
Singapore
safety car. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, especially on Singapore. Also, they don't know what to do with the DRS zone. With that start-finish straight that's approximately 500 miles long, they can't seem to work out whether if you open the DRS early and cars just breeze past and it's too easy, and then they obviously moved it last weekend and then no one could get past. So yeah, I agree with you on Baku. I was really surprised when I saw it on the list of sprint weekends, because again, it's not known for being a thriller. It's not known for fast overtaking. So again, maybe F1 didn't help itself with its choice of track, possibly.
But that's what I mean. I think people think it is. That's what I feel like. I feel like I'm the only one who sees it. You know what I mean? I feel like people think Baku, long straight, loads of overtaking, but I don't think that's true. But
no, I agree with you.
Logan Sargent, home race for him. Never raced a car in America, never done an American motor race, which I find quite remarkable for his home race. Well, he spoke to Christian earlier on this weekend. This is what he had to say.
Logan Sargent, welcome to Firefly Formula One.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
For those not aware, you are very much a local, aren't you? Take us through that.
I am. It's extremely nice to be home, to be back in the South Florida climate. Feels good. Get a little bit of sun for the first time in a while. And, yeah, I'm looking forward to the weekend. A lot of family and friends are here to support. And, yeah, the American fans always do it right. So I'm sure we're going to have a great atmosphere this weekend.
We're sat having this chat in the Williams hospitality area and I mean inside, the Hard Rock Stadium, home of the Miami Dolphins. And your name, Logan Sargent, is on a board, is on the big scoreboard. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah, I see it.
How mad is it to be sat inside the Dolphin Stadium, which you'll have seen since you were little kids?
It's really, really cool. I've watched so many games in the stands here. I've watched countless Dolphins games, cheered them on. And, yeah, to be in the stadium is awesome, and then to be racing around it is even cooler. So, no, I mean, growing up here, and this is, really home for me. It's a cool experience.
Did you ever think Formula One would come to the States? Because obviously you moved to Europe as a kid to go and race, and obviously you're a big American race fan, but I'm guessing you never thought you'd kind of put together your home state and your career in such close proximity, because you're not an American football player.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I think when I moved to Europe, I was so young that I wasn't really thinking about it. But COTA came quite soon after I moved, and I didn't think there would be more than COTA, to be honest with you. And then they added Miami and now Vegas, and to have three at home is really cool. And this one especially in my own backyard, pretty much. Man, it doesn't get better than that.
This is the home race of the home races.
This is as home as it can get. I don't think anyone has a closer home race than this.
How far was the house you grew up in from here?
20 minutes.
Really?
It's a proper backyard race for me.
That's amazing. And how does that feel? Surreal, exciting? Does it add pressure because friends and family are here?
No, it's exciting. I started racing 10 minutes down the road, and I'm back here in a Formula One car. It's a really cool experience, and yeah, it's going to be a difficult weekend. I've never driven the track before. It's going to be hot, humid. From what the drivers have said, extremely physical, and yeah, there's a lot of hurdles to climb this weekend and to get over. But yeah, I'm excited to take on the challenge, and I'm just going to enjoy every moment of my first race here at home, and of course I'm going to do my best to perform well and deliver the best results I can for the team.
4 races into your Formula One career then, how is Formula One compared to what you expected it to be going in?
I've just realized how important it is to be on the top of your game each and every day, and that's a lot easier said than done. It's easy to have flashes here and there, but at this level to really, stand out, it needs to be each and every single day. And that's what I'm working on. I feel like it's coming towards me, and I'm getting more comfortable. I'm getting more consistent. But, yeah, I'm still chasing that last little bit of performance. But I know it'll come, and I'm not too worried about it at the moment.
Certain racing drivers are harder on themselves than others. I don't know where you fit in the spectrum, but how do you rate your own start? If you were to sit there at Christmas or February and go, this would be a good start, how do you rate from where you were sort of hoping to put yourself?
I don't think I had an exact expectation. I truly believe that I would be quick enough and be able to fight with the other drivers. And I think at times this year I've had really, really good days, and I've also had tough days. That being said, that was expected. I knew there would be, difficult days. I knew there would be good days, and I'm probably about where I expected. I think I'm definitely not satisfied. I know that I have a lot more to improve on, and I want to be better than what I'm doing. So I'm working hard at it. I'm doing everything I can, and I really can see the differences and feel the differences. And it's hard when you're going to these tracks that you've never been to, and these street tracks, and that always makes it more challenging. So I'm just learning as much as I can now, and then I know when I get to the tracks that I'm more familiar with, it's all going to come to me.
Also, I'm guessing a lot of street tracks and tracks you've not been to bunched up at the start of the season.
Exactly.
That must have added an extra bit of I wouldn't say pressure, but an extra bit.
It's another variable in the
exactly.
challenge. Yeah. I mean, 100%. It's one mistake here in the wall, as I found out in Baku, and it's part of the game. We have to push. We have to put it on the limit. If not, what are we doing? So I've learned a lot. I learned a lot in Baku, and as I said, I really feel like my qualifyings were getting better in Baku. I feel like everything was coming to me, especially considering we only had one practice session there. So I'm excited to get back to a normal format. Again, it's a track I don't know, but 3 sessions to build up to it, and hopefully that'll put us in a good place to have it in quali.
A track you don't know in the area of the world you know the best. The irony's there, isn't it?
Exactly. But yeah, we're going to make the most of it. I'm sure of that.
In terms of Williams, it's quite clear there's no backmarkers this year. It seems that, you know, whoever is slowest in terms of that midfield pack on any given race weekend is going to change. And Williams have spoken a lot this year about tracks that suit them. Where is Miami on that spectrum for Williams? What can you guys expect this weekend?
It's a tough question. We don't think we're going to be too bad. We think we have we believe from 10th to 20th is within a few tenths, and that really leaves it to be able to nail the laps, get comfortable, get familiar with the track for me, and just deliver when it matters most and put something together. So yeah, we expect to be thereabouts. We believe that we're capable of being close to Q3, but at the same time, without close to be able to go out in Q1 if we don't do a good job. So, yeah, it's going to be tight out there for sure, but I think if we're on our game, you'll definitely see us into Q2.
Christian, did you enjoy your conversation?
I really enjoyed my conversation. I've actually been lucky enough to speak to Logan Sargent quite a few times this season, and he just comes across as a fundamentally very nice guy who is, it's nice to see a rookie in Formula One looking like he's enjoying himself, because we all know the pressure Formula One drivers are put under, and sometimes that pressure spills over and it's not enjoyable. But Logan seems to be really enjoying Formula One. I really like the fact that he grew up 20 minutes down the road. I mentioned to him that when I drove to the track from the hotel, as soon as I get onto the main intersection, there's a big billboard with Logan's face on it. And you could see the little glint in his eye, and he went, yeah, it is cool. I just think it's really sweet. So I think he's a nice guy. I think he's shown flashes of speed and real promise this year. Because I mentioned this in commentary, in free practice commentary, I think there was a perception that Williams were only sticking him in the car, sort of like Nicholas Latifi, to get sponsorship money and further sort of American appeal, and that's not my understanding at all. I think Williams think he's a real, potential star of the future, and he's shown those flashes of speed. So I'd like to see him put it all together this weekend, because I think there's potential in there with Logan.
He's been all right, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's had pace. That's the hardest thing to have in Formula One, is to have the basic speed. He's just been a bit erratic through 4 races. He's had a couple of crashes, and I think he'll get there. You kind of need to put it together at some point, or the pressure starts building and it becomes a little bit ruthless, a tough atmosphere to turn it around. And maybe Nick de Vries is the other rookie out there that may face that. He's had a tough run and had a little crash in practice as well. So Sargent's not quite in that position. He's up against Alex Albon in the team. Albon is good, highly rated, and delivering high performances as well. So if Sargent's there or thereabouts, which he is on pace, that's a very encouraging start, I think.
Right, Christian, what are you looking forward to most about? Actually, in fact, if you're listening to the podcast now, we're recording this in between FP1 and FP2. So if some crazy stuff happened in FP2, apologies that we haven't spoken about it, but that's just covering that one off. Christian, what are you looking forward to most this weekend?
I mentioned again, I'm looking forward to seeing how Logan does. I think it'll be really interesting to see how America gets behind its sort of potential new wonder kid, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to seeing, obviously we know Aston Martin had sort of DRS issues last weekend. I'm really looking forward to seeing, the impression I get, to be completely honest with you, is Ferrari, Mercedes and Aston Martin don't fully know the order they will be in. So I'm really looking forward to seeing and hoping we get a bit of a best of the rest scrap, because let's be honest, I think we know Verstappen and Perez will be between those two for the win, unless something strange happens or unless we get rain. Oh, on that, it is forecast to rain on Sunday. Now, I asked Logan off air about this. I was like, listen, you're from around here, it's forecast rain, is it going to rain? And Logan was like, no, it always says it's going to rain in 2 or 3 days' time, and it never does, so it absolutely won't rain. So if the local boy categorically insists it won't rain, maybe it'll rain. So yeah, unless we get some rain, I'm sure we'll get of Red Bull fight for the front, but I think the bickering behind them between the other three teams could be quite interesting.
There were outrageous storms last year. At night, overnight, the storms were just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Well, that's forecast for Sunday, and I've been keeping an eye on the weather ahead of coming out here, and it's been consistent. Sunday, storms. But I don't know how... I've got a waterproof, but that's it. I haven't got appropriate footwear, I'll be honest with you. But, I mean, who knows how good a meteorologist Logan Sargent is, but he was very confident it's not going to rain on Sunday.
Well, hopefully he is a good meteorologist, because somebody's got to start putting it all together, and...
a lot of tropical places...
Oh, here we go. Palmer's meteorology. I love this. Settle in, everybody.
Yeah, but you race in like Malaysia, Singapore, any of these places, hot, humid countries, and you're going on holiday there.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to.
Yeah.
And you look on the weather, you're like, well, what's it doing? Every day, every hour, just storms.
Yeah.
Yes, you're so right.
Every day, every hour, and it's like, oh, well, I'm not going there. It's just going to be perilous.
Yeah.
And it normally happens for about 20 minutes of the day. You get one flash storm, flash flood, and then it's dry again because it's so hot within an hour. It was the same in Miami last year.
Yeah.
Very impressive storm. Very impressive.
We had a damp practice or something, I think, didn't we? Was there FP3 damp? Or, like, the track was a bit damp when we arrived or something. I think
it was just slippery tarmac, wasn't it?
It was slippery tarmac and our sweat. I think that's the problem.
And it is hot today. It is hot. It's hotter than yesterday, and it's more humid than yesterday. It is absolutely boiling, and to get signal, going into some semantics of radio here, to get signal I had to come out from under the umbrella I was sheltered under because the umbrella was blocking my signal. So standing here talking to you guys, it is so hot. I mean, it could be worse.
Some of Palmer and I's biggest arguments were Miami last year over commentary box aircon, because you would arrive and I'd have the aircon off, I think, because it was too cold or something. You'd storm in, throw a fit.
It was El Scorchio outside, and you decided that you had a bit of a tickle in your throat.
Oh, I was ill.
Yeah,
that was it. I was ill. I got ill from the aircon. So I had to turn the aircon
on in our tiny porter cabin. It was a farce.
Yeah. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Catch up the coverage all weekend. We are live with every session as ever. Checker Flag podcast available after qualifying tomorrow and after the race on Sunday. I've already said the IMG thing, so that's about it, really. Join us over the course of the weekend to see what happens in the battle at the top of the championship between the Red Bull drivers in the Miami Grand Prix. I should have asked. We should have done more about celebrities and who's your favourite celebrity to come to the race. That would have been a fun one for Palmer. But there we go. Right. Bye. See you after the Grand Prix.